Hello there everybody, this is Krista and welcome back to Crochet Witch Tarot, and today we are doing a VR to a very fun video I saw on Spirited Stardust's channel. I will put a link to the video below, and she created this tag called the Mid-Year Tarot Tag. So basically it is a list of 10 questions, pretty straightforward, just as like truly a mid-year check-in of like what are you enjoying right now? What has not worked out? What is working out? All the fun things. So, let's just get right into it because I'm very excited. The first question is your favorite deck you've used so far this year, and I don't think this will be a huge surprise, but that is the Oracle of the Roses for me, which honestly was a huge surprise for me. I didn't really think I was ever going to get this deck. It did not interest me in the slightest when it came out, but when I started my garden in the spring, it kind of lined up with when I got this deck. And the whole just idea and energy and look of roses just stole the show for me. To the point where I now have so many different rose plants already. I love them. I think they're fantastic. And this deck it's just so good. It's so good. And the concept is we have all these different types of roses, but it is at its core an archetype deck, which I really enjoy. I love the guidebook messages. I really love the different archetypes chosen. The messages are always spot on. I love the images. The layout of the deck just really pairs well with so many different tarots of mine. I think that's such a big factor as to why I use this so often, is because visually it just goes with so much. I love this vintage style. I really just love everything about this deck. And I do love that the guidebook gives you information on each of these individual roses. So it feels a little bit like you are tapping into the energy of that rose as well. But honestly, to me, I really focus on that archetype, and the rose feels a little bit like an added bonus because I love roses. But this has entirely stolen the show for me this year. Again, I'm sure it's not a surprise with how much I have talked about it. So that is my answer for that. That is the Oracle of the Roses. This is by Sherilyn Darcy, put out by Rockpool. So, number 2 is a new deck that came into your collection. So, this question was a little interesting for me because I bring in a lot of decks. It's what I like. That's what I like to do. So I couldn't really think of it in terms of a deck because there have been many decks I have brought in so far. So I looked at it from a different angle and just decided to go with a deck I have brought in recently that I've really been enjoying. We're just gonna go with that. And for me, it is the Rain Shadow Tarot by Claire Mack. I have just been having such a good time with this deck since I got it. I did not back on Kickstarter for some crazy pants reason. But as soon as this went up in her Etsy shop, I bought a copy because I love everything going on with this deck. I love Claire Mack's collage style. I love the colors that go on here. I love the symbols she uses. It just really feels like one of those decks where every time you pull even the same card over and over again, there's something new to look at, and I really appreciate that when it comes to my tarot decks. Sometimes you just need a deck like that, but it's got this really cool earthy feel, but I don't know, for her decks to me feel like they tap into this really deep ancestral energy And by that I mean where it's like not connected to any sort of traceable family line. It's more like, I don't know if primal is the right word, but I feel like it really goes to like the beginning of humankind or something. I don't know if I am making any sense there, but I feel like it goes so far back, almost to like this like real communal ancestral line. Oh, look at that blackbird. I love the colors in here too. It feels like a melding of her two oracles into a tarot deck almost. And I have just been absolutely loving getting to know this one. So that is my answer for number 2, which I kind of changed around a little. And that is the Rain Shadow Tarot by Claire Mack. Okay, number 3, most anticipated deck released so far this year. Easy question. Tarot of the Witch's Garden. So much so that I don't think I've ever done this before, but I bought this bag for this deck before I even bought the deck, but knowing it was going to be housing Tarot of the Witch's Garden. Because I don't pre-order mass market decks. I don't know, I just don't. I don't really see that much of the point. I do think it's nice, like, I supporting the sales beforehand. I don't know. Personally, I just don't do it. Makes no difference, I suppose. But anyway, so this deck I followed as closely as I could with the artwork. I absolutely love the artwork in this deck. It's by, I'm not going to be able to pronounce her name, Natalie is... Goodness gracious. Yeah, cannot pronounce her name. I'm so sorry. Let me get the book so I can show it at least. If it is right here, which I think... yes, it is. Because I've just been using this so constantly. Natasha Ilinsik is the artist, and she also did the, an oracle that came out really recently too. And I have it. Where is my memory today? Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to check that too, or it's gonna bother me. And apparently I'm just taking you all along for the ride. Why pause? Compendium of Witches. She created the Compendium of Witches, the artist for this deck. And so she illustrated this in combination with Sasha Graham, who I love how Sasha Graham sees the tarot. I love her writing in this guidebook. I think it's really fantastic. But the whole concept, and combined with the art I already knew I loved, oh my gosh. I just felt like I was sitting in wait for this deck. Like, Tarot of the Witch's Garden, yes. Not to mention that it lined up with me being able to create my own garden for the first time. So it felt so perfect. And then it got released that it was coming out on this linen cardstock. Oh my gosh, I could not wait to get my hands on this deck. To the point where there is a misprint in here with 2 of the major arcanas, just the number being switched. I didn't care. I was like, no, it doesn't matter to me enough to wait any longer. I need to have this deck in my hands, and it has been out ever since it came out. I use it constantly. I think it's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. So that is hands down my answer for most anticipated deck released so far this year, Tarot of the Witch's Garden. Okay, let's hope I'm more prepared for the the other decks I have to show here. I think I am. Oh, the next one is Biggest Disappointment. This one, I don't know. I don't like these kinds of questions. I don't know if that says something. we won't think that deep into that. I had a really hard time with this one, and honestly, I don't know. This was the best answer I had, but I'm not holding myself to the answer, I suppose. So my biggest disappointment so far this year is probably the Conjure cards. And this is a personal problem, because it's just, I've been working with, you know, the cards along with this guidebook, and I think it's just something where I'm like, I don't get the right situation to use these cards, because trying to use them as like a daily draw or something like that, it felt really dramatic, for lack of better words there. It felt like really intense, so it's almost like maybe this is a deck that you are not supposed to use it as a daily draw. Maybe it's something you go to with specific questions, or when you need sort of like a bigger, more general reading. I don't know, but it felt very like fortune tellery, which I think is the point, and I think maybe that is just kind of a foreign concept to me right now, so that's why I'm not getting it. But I have not given up on this deck, because I think there's something about it I really enjoy. I love the aesthetic of it as well, and I'm fascinated by it. I think I just need to give it another go. But if I had to choose a biggest disappointment so far this year, it's probably this one, because I am excited about it. It's just something isn't clicking for me. And that's probably just due to my own thing of wanting things to click immediately, and when they don't, I'm like, well, oh well. I guess we gave that our best shot, when, like, I absolutely did not. So, that is my answer for that, the Conjure cards, but we are not giving up. Not yet. Also, I think the box is kind of crazy pants, because it needs, like, a magnet, you know, it doesn't actually stay closed, so that's a thing that's interesting as well. Anywho, moving on, the biggest surprise so far this year, and that, for me, is the Wild Unknown Alchemy, because I never in a million years thought I would be interested at all in alchemy, learning alchemy in general, or this deck, because I think, not to say that I'm not interested, because the little bit I knew, I thought it was fascinating. But I think it just felt like something so big and so beyond any current knowledge I have that it was daunting. And it felt like something that is like, okay, I really need to dedicate so much time to learning it before I can use any sort of deck themed around it. And, you know, time. Who really has it, right? Right. So it felt daunting, and so I didn't even consider this deck in the slightest, because I was like, well, I'm not gonna get it. I'm not gonna understand it. Also, not to mention that when it came out, I was really convinced that I didn't like Kim Kranz's artwork, which is kind of funny, because this deck completely set off a fascination for me, and now I am a huge fan. I've got all of the decks now, not the pockets, but like a copy of all of the decks she has put out, and I think they're fantastic, and I love her artwork now. So that's kind of part of the surprise as well, is it really just unlocked an understanding for me of her art style. But all this to say that I went into this deck not cold turkey, but like no knowledge, zero information floating around in my brain that was specifically about alchemy. And I can use this deck just fine. The guidebook explains exactly enough, but beyond that, I have been thoroughly enjoying it and getting so much out of it. This has been one that it's been coming out almost every single day. I think it's so great. Even though it's difficult to shuffle because of the shape, I don't think I would the shape is perfect though, you know, like I wouldn't change the shape. I'm like, it makes sense to this deck. So, this is for sure my biggest surprise so far this year, and that is the Wild Unknown Alchemy Oracle. Oh boy. It's inevitable. That's a game we can just start playing. Is how many times is Krista gonna knock over the decorations she's trying to put in there? Okay, so question number 6 is, what is your current deck crush? And this one, we have been going strong for quite a few months now so far this year, and that is the Hellenic Oracle that I have in this beautiful Moonlit Fae bag. I thought it was such a good match. But oh my goodness, I don't really know how else to explain how I feel about this deck other than just enamored. I just think... Oh. Okay, I had to go close the door because I wasn't sure if you all would be able to hear Paul playing his video game, but he was having a grand old time. So anyway, we blocked that noise out. What was I saying? Oh, so the way to explain my relationship with this deck so far is just completely enamored. It feels magical and just directly linked to that divine energy in a way that I have not experienced in a deity oracle so far. So this deck is from Thea from Garden Goddess Tarot. She is the creatrix of this deck, and I think it's also, you know, watching her videos about this deck, knowing how passionate she is on this topic of the Greek pantheon, I think that really adds to it as well. That adds to the magic, for sure. But I love this artwork. This artwork is everything in this deck. I think the choices she made were so fantastic. I have nothing bad to say about this deck whatsoever, and does anyone else get this, where it's like you have a deck where you truly feel enamored with it, where it's like every time you take it out you almost get those like butterflies? It's the only way I have to explain it. And I've loved the work I've done with this deck, but there is just still this energy of like, oh my gosh, I'm getting butterflies. Like, I love this deck so much. It just hasn't lost that new deck sparkle, and it's been months. And I think it's just because it really feels like this direct link to this divine energy. And I love it so much. And I love the fact that, you know, it doesn't come with a guidebook, so you're given the god or goddess, and you know, if you don't know much about them, it's sort of up to you to spend the time to look into their myth and what they're about. And adding that extra layer of effort too, it just makes it feel extra special because, you know, until I am very familiar with all of these, I have to add some extra time into reading with it, and that's something I've been really enjoying, is just kind of slowing down in that way. So that is for sure my deck crush so far this year, and that is the Hellenic Oracle. Alrighty, next question is either a deck that made you sad or a deck that made you cry. So you could kind of look at it in two different ways of like, you know, was there something that made you sad in the sense of like, oh, it didn't work out, or one that made you cry. And we're going with that, because why not? And that is Tarot Avatara. This deck loves to make me cry. It just really loves to do that. It's so rude. But it's because it really is just such a profound feeling deck, and it hits into this communal experience somehow I think a lot of us have had through the story of the life of Frida Kahlo. That's just like some of the instances we get in this deck, it's like it just really hits home and hits a chord in such a way where it's like, ooh, hitting this deep-seated thing, this like true communal experience is the only way I have to describe it. Of like we've all experienced something adjacent to some of the things brought up in this deck, and it's very intense in that way. But I really appreciate it for that. Oh my gosh, like this Ten of Wands. This is the one that got me the other day, because you can see it's like she herself is hurting, but she's still having to orchestrate all these different things. And like the weight of that on her shoulders. It's just so good. It's such a good deck. This is by Gabby Angus West. I love her art style as well. I don't know if there's more to say than that. Just is what it is. The deck that made me cry. That is Tarot Avatara by Gabby Angus West. Okay, we are up to number 8, and that is the deck that made you happy. Okay, this was an easy one. That is the Blooming Lovelies Oracle. This deck makes me smile every single time I pull a card. The little sayings on it are just so good. I don't think I specified at the beginning of this video. I definitely didn't. We'll just do it now. It's okay. For most of the decks I am picking out for these, I am focusing on decks that are new to me this year so far too. Just because, like what I was mentioning with number 2, with like, since I do enjoy collecting decks, bringing in new decks to try, I just thought that would be a fun layer to add. So I don't know if that's 100% true, like Tarot Avatara was not new this year, but that might be the only one. Yeah, I think that might be the only one. But otherwise, I kind of tried to focus on the decks I've brought in so far to try this year as well. So, anyways, let's keep going. Look at this. A peaceful world is worth believing in. The incredible nonsense of being. How good is that card? I love the artwork on this. It makes me smile every single time. I love just that you get a quick little saying. The reality is that magic is real. Rise again. Tender are the dreams we hold on to. But you like it a bit weird. And they're so funny, but also really touching at times. It's a feel-good deck. If at first you don't succeed, check your flaps. I just love this one. It feels like the perfect kind of affirmation deck for me. And it's something I love using when I just need that kind of gentle, joyful energy. Like, this feels like one of those really, like, slow-paced children's shows to me. Like, Little Bear. The cartoon Little Bear. Cartoon version, I should say. Where it was really slow-paced and soft and just made you feel good. But, you know, still had an important message. That's what this deck feels like to me. And it has made me so happy so far this year. So that is the Blooming Lovelies Oracle by Zeppelin Moon. Alright, we are up to number 9, and that is the most beautiful deck so far this year, and that, for me, is the Tarot of the Drowning World. This is put out by Flendermoss Workshop. Do we have any names beyond that? Kahn and Selznick, that's what I was looking for. These same creators as the Carnival at the End of the World, or Tarot. This whole deck is just a luxurious experience. It is larger than tarot size. It is printed from Expert Playing Cards, so it's got that really beautiful linen finish, and it still has that inky smell to it. Oh my gosh, it is so luxurious. But the images for this deck is a photographic deck entirely, and they were made by floating all these plants and objects in the middle of this huge garden, I want to say in like upstate New York. So beautiful. I loved looking through some of the process photos that they have up on their website, or maybe their Instagram or something. I just think the creation of this deck was so genius and just really innovative and creative, and that's something I really appreciate about this. And I do really love reading with this deck too. I've been using it quite a lot, but part of the draw for me too is like it really does feel like having this piece of artwork. Which is not to say, you know, every tarot deck I have is its own artwork, but it really felt like this whole deck is more about the artistic expression and capturing this specific artistic process, I guess you could say. And maybe I feel that way because I don't have the printed expanded guidebook, but even from what I've seen, you know, the messages in the guidebook are pretty straightforward and concise, so to me, I think that would still stand true. And so using this really feels like getting kind of a glimpse into this world of artistic expression through photography in this way. And I really do love photography, so many things going for this deck for me, and I could just look at all these images all day. They are so beautiful. So beautiful. So this was hands down my most beautiful deck so far this year. So now that brings us to our last question, number 10, a deck you want by the end of the year. And I think for me that has to be bringing in some more Siliconway decks. So this is the one I have. This is the Devas of Creation, which I love. So that's what we're going to look at while we are talking about this. But I just have really fallen in love with her artwork and her writing through the Devas of Creation, that I would love to explore more of her decks. I know there is another oracle that kind of is like a, I don't know if like sister oracle to this is quite the right words, but I think you can mix it in. It's like a similar-ish concept. Don't quote me on that, but it's kind of like in the same realm of the Devas of Creation. But also, I'm really interested in her Book of the Dead oracle. I think that is a fascinating concept, as well as the Shimmering Veil Tarot is just beautiful. So I would absolutely love, by the end of the year, to have another Siliconway deck to explore and get to know, because look at that. I've really, really loved getting to know this deck as well so far this year. It's just been really magical and just really cool. I've noticed that a lot of the decks I've been gravitating towards lately feel like they have this real kind of deep work essence to them, which, you know, you can do whatever you deem as deep work with any deck under the sun, but to me, I categorize that as like real meaty guidebooks, or like, you know, they kind of leave you scratching your head a little bit, seeing things in a new way. I've really been gravitating towards that lately, and this is definitely one of those decks for me, so I'd love to add more of her work to my collection for sure. So that is my answer for number 10. Just one of the other Siliconway decks. And that, my friends, is the last thing I have to show you today. So other than that, I hope you all had a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you again very soon.